You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Welcome to yet another fine, outstanding, stupendous edition of the Wrestling Outsiders Podcast. My name is Arya Whitner, and I am joined tonight by nobody. Brian's not here because, to make a long story short, I had lined up a guest that was going to take over the second half of tonight's show. However, at the last minute, the second guest got rescheduled for a future time, and Brian had already had other plans rather than tape, his part of the show. So I'm here all alone doing NXT Takeover, the end. And Friday, by the looks of it, there's going to be a bonus edition of the Wrestling Outsiders Podcast this Friday. I'll try to get Brian on to do his part. But hopefully, cross your fingers, tap on wood, it doesn't get rescheduled, canceled, whatever. But let's jump into the show. NXT Takeover, the end. It's funny because for weeks now, ever since they announced the subtitle of this NXT Takeover, people took that as meaning that this was going to be the final NXT show ever. Like, oh my God, they're calling it the end because it's the end of NXT. And meanwhile, I'm sitting over here going, dumbasses, the NXT still has to exist even if they take every single person with a name off the show. Lord. So this show was here. It was a very good show. It set up several matches for the summer. Debuted 3 new talents. And it was top to bottom just an excellent show. Starting with Andrade Cien Almas versus Ty Dillinger, the Perfect 10, versus the man with 100 in the middle of his name. Go figure. The fans really loved Dillinger, and it took them a few minutes where they got into Almas, and this ended up being a really hot 5-minute match. It was similar to Apollo Crews' debut last August in that it was more competitive than most of the NXT debuts have been over the years. The fans at one point did a dueling chant of He's 100 and Perfect 10. They did this awesome move where Andrade went for a moonsault off the middle rope, but Dillinger rolled out of the way. However, when Andrade landed, he landed on his feet and immediately hit a standing moonsault to Dillinger. Dillinger got several near falls, including one after he hit a super kick when Andrade was upside down on the top rope. And the end was Almas winning with the running doubled knees in the corner while Dillinger was seated on his bum. American Alpha versus the Revival for the NXT Tag Team Championship. It was different from the usual American Alpha matches. It didn't start with several minutes of Gable and Jordan suplexing their opponents all over the place. Instead, it was more of a fight than a wrestling match. At one point, the match broke down into a 4-way with Jordan and Gable doing simultaneous takedowns and then used a double ankle lock, which made the fans go bananas since, they already look at them as a team of 2 Kurt Angles. Dawson used a spine buster at one point, which looked nicer than any spine buster Triple H has ever used in his career. Dash and Dawson clipped Gable's knee out during the heat and used a real nice double-team combination leg drop for a near fall. Jordan made the hot tag and went, as I call it, all full suplex university on both men. The Revival got many near falls before the finish, making you think, with all the near falls Revival kept getting over and over again, that American Alpha would come away with the victory. However, no. The finish sees American Alpha go for Grand Amplitude. However, it gets broken up. Gable gets thrown to the outside of the ring, and after a shatter machine, the Revival become the first team to win 2 NXT Tag Team Championships, winning clean in the middle with the Shatter Machine. Now, as I've mentioned probably 3,174 times, Adrian Neville is a 2-time NXT Tag Team Champion. However, he won it with 3 different partners, with Oliver Gray, Bo Dallas, and then Corey Graves. In case you're curious how that's possible, Oliver Gray got injured, credited to the Wyatt family, so Bo, easy for me to say. So Bo Dallas took over in the middle of the tag team title reign, and so that's how he's won 2 titles with 3 partners. The fans were legitimately shocked by the finish, as you know, I was getting an inkling, especially considering how the Revival had been booked the last few weeks, especially last week where they got punked out at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the show. But I don't think many people actually expected American Alpha to lose the belt so quickly, but they did. However, in case that wasn't shocking enough for you, 2 very large men ran in and beat down American Alpha after the match. They laid out Gable and Jordan before Paul Ellering, of all people, appeared on the ramp, nodding his approval at this. The fans had no clue who they were either, chanting, "Who are you?" Some people seemed to indicate they were chanting, "Who are you?" at Paul Ellering, which, to be fair, it took me a second to realize who it was myself. Going through Twitter, no one seemed to know who the men were for about 5 minutes or so. However, it did come out later, and I am sure I am going to butcher the pronunciation of their names. But according to Twitter, the 2 men are known as the Authors of Pain, Sonny Dinza and Gazim Selmani. Either way, I'm sure I'll find out how to pronounce those in the weeks to come, but that was a really, really interesting little angle there. Shinsuke Nakamura versus Austin Aries. As expected, this was an excellent match. Aries had his ribs taped for some unknown reason, and while Nakamura threw some kicks at the ribs, it didn't really play that much into the match. The fans sang Nakamura's theme song, which, if you recall, is completely instrumental. It was pushed in commentary that no one has ever controlled Nakamura the way Aries was doing in this match. Aries was stretching Nakamura on the mat, and that every time Nakamura would go for one of his moves, Aries would have the counter. When he was on offense, though, Nakamura kicked Aries 7 ways from sideways. Nakamura at one point went for the Kinshasa, but Aries blocked it and suplexed Nakamura on his head, locking on the last chancery. However, Nakamura got to the ropes. Aries gave Nakamura at one point a Death Valley driver on the ring apron, which looked like it killed Nakamura to death. While they were counting out Nakamura, the crowd did that annoying thing where they count one number ahead of the referee during a count out. However, this led actually to the finish, where Aries went for a suicide dive, but Nakamura moved, causing Aries to crash into the barricade. Nakamura threw Aries back into the ring, hit the Kinshasa, and Shinsuke Nakamura picks up another victory here on NXT. For everyone who was crying about the Takeover event being pulled from Ticketmaster and this show being called The End, showing that there'd be no more NXT, well, you can breathe a little bit, because they announced that this Saturday at 12 noon, tickets will go on sale for NXT Takeover Brooklyn. But just breathe, everybody. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Alrighty, we've got our NXT back. You know, I want to point out it's not just my NXT, it's everybody's NXT. Just breathe, everybody. Isn't that feel nice now? Alrighty, so let's move on to the next match, which was Asuka and Nia Jax for the NXT Women's Championship. A much better match than expected. They built the match similar to the Bayley match from a few weeks ago, where Jax just completely dominated Asuka from the bell. Every time Asuka went for a move, Nia would either block it or power out of it. Asuka's biggest move was a knee bar, but Nia was right near the ropes. Asuka made her comeback using a series of brutal-looking spinning back fists that Nia was not doing a thing to block. She was catching them all right with her face. And after like the second one, Asuka figured out that this girl was getting beat on for real, because the third one was kind of a half-hearted blow. But either way, Nia used the power bomb, much like the contract signing last week where Asuka went for a kick but got caught. She went for the cover, and somehow, and I'm still not even sure how this is possible, Asuka turned a pinfall attempt into a straight armbar. Jax got out of that, but Asuka then won with several very hard kicks to the face and the head. So Asuka is still your NXT Women's Champion. Not at the level of the great TakeOver women's matches of the past, but still really, really good, and is still better than most women's matches you'll see on WWE television. Should mention, earlier in the show, Asuka was training and beating up some guy in the back, and Bayley walked up and wished her good luck and shook her hand. And I don't think it takes a genius to figure out, and I'll get Lanny Poffo on the line just to confirm, but I don't think I need it to confirm that these two are probably going to face off in Brooklyn on the 1-year anniversary of Bayley winning the title for the first time, and that match is going to be nuts. We then got something that actually had no real payoff during this show anyway. They showed a video from earlier today where Mr. William Regal was talking to Kathy Kelly about how great the show was going to be, when in the back you could see Bobby Roode walk up through the hallway and enter the dressing room. A security person informed Mr. Regal of this, and Mr. Regal quickly darted into the dressing room, and we never saw either of them ever again. But it's okay, because there's only one match to go. Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor for the NXT title in a steel cage match. Pinfall, submission, or escape was the way to win. For those wondering, like I was, I didn't think they would actually hang a cage up over the ring, because I didn't think Full Sail was, I didn't think the arena itself was tall enough or high enough to have that thing hanging over the ring the whole night. And what they did, and I have no idea how they did this, but I mean, they flattened it out and raised it above the ring, and then as it lowered the sides of the cage into place. It was a different cage than the one they used during WWE shows. And this was yet another excellent match, an excellent main event, and an excellent way to finally finish the feud between these two men. It was exactly the physical match you expect from the two of them, and at least this time, Joe didn't accidentally bleed in the first 30 seconds of the match. On two different occasions, Joe hip-tossed Balor into the cage, which could not feel good. There was an amazing spot where both men were on the top rope. Finn went to hoist himself up over the top of the cage, but as he did that, Joe did his jumping into Gary to the back of Finn's head, and both men went crashing to the mat below. Joe at one point was caught between the ropes and the cage, with Balor slamming him into the cage time and time again. However, it came back to bite Balor in the ass, because Balor was standing on the top rope, gave Joe a pretty wicked kick to the face, and Joe hunched over the top rope, which tripped Balor up, crotching Balor on the top rope, and that also, I bet, did not feel very good. We saw both men kick out of each other's finish. Balor kicked out of of a muscle buster. Joe kicked out of a coup de grace. Balor was hitting sling blades all over the place, including one where Joe was on the top rope and Balor gave him a sling blade off the top of there. Both men, they teased going out the door, but there never seemed to be a real, urgency to see either man do it. The crowd seemed to expect Balor to come off the top of the cage with a coup de grace, and at one point I was actually expecting it because the announcers actually called attention to it. However, didn't happen. The finish saw Balor climb. It looked like he was trying to climb out, but he got caught, and Samoa Joe gave him a muscle buster off the middle rope to pin him, and yes, retain the NXT title. So for once, the Samoa Joe beat the Demon at NXT Takeover, and I think it's safe to assume, and Lord knows it could be wrong, but I think it's safe to assume that Joe is going to, or not Joe, but Finn Balor's probably going to go to the main roster soon. But to cap things off, that was an excellent Takeover show. If you missed it, you missed a really good show. It wasn't the can't miss, must go out of your way to see it show, but if you saw it, it's better than 99% of the WWE shows you're going to see this year. I bet it's going to be better than Money in the Bank. They're building up Money in the Bank as the best WWE pay-per-view ever, which, we can all argue about all day long, but this show is better than that one's going to be, in my opinion. So that is that. So let's go into some wrestling news here, shall we? TNA Slammiversary this Sunday. Quickly running down the matches here for many of you don't know, it's the second live TNA pay-per-view of the year. They're probably only going to do one more in October for Bound for Glory. And let's go down the card here. Drew Galloway, the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, defending against Bobby Lashley, winner by knockout or tap out. I see Lashley winning it because it's TNA, and heels must always win at all times. It must always be the champions forever and ever and ever. We have Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy, Full Metal Mayhem. I don't know. The match should be fine, but Jeff will probably win here. Mike Bennett versus EC3. I see EC3 getting his revenge because I believe Mike Bennett has beaten him time and time again, including being the first person to actually pin him, I believe. Lord knows I could just be horribly wrong here, and everyone out there who actually watches TNA might be screaming at me right now. Decay versus the Bromans for the tag team titles. I don't even know who they have in their tag team division anymore. I know they had to put the Bromans back together because they didn't have any tag teams. But Decay should win. Abyss and Crazy Steve, that is. Gail Kim versus Maria Kanellis. The less said about that, the better. Eli Drake defending the King of the Mountain title against Bram. Bram just got re-signed, I'm sure, to a multi-year contract. And, I don't know. I could see Drake just retaining the title. It's one of those that doesn't really matter. Speaking of things, a random tag team match, Grado and Mahabali Shera versus the Tribunal, who used to be Sylvester Lefort and Marcus Louis. I love Sylvester Lefort. I want to see him do well here, and I'll take the Tribunal to win this one. Braxton Sutter, who is the former Pepper Parks, versus James Storm, who's the former guy who was simultaneously on NXT and TNA at the same time. I don't know. it's funny because James Storm should be in one of the main events, but he's not, and he'll probably never be again. Braxton Sutter's new, so go with Braxton Sutter to win that one. Trevor Lee, Andrew Everett, DJ Z, Eddie Edwards in a 4-way for the X Division title. Trevor Lee's held the belt for a while now. He defended an Ultimate X match. This is not an Ultimate X match, just your standard everyday match. Good luck, trying to beat the 4-way in the WWE pay-per-view last month. And I can see either Trevor winning or, Eddie Edwards winning. I don't think DJ Z has a chance. And Andrew Everett, he's probably got a slightly better chance than DJ Z. Jade versus Sienna for the women's title. If you tell me I've seen them wrestle before, I'll take your word for it. Sienna is Allison Kay, apparently. I think she was in NXT. Let me check here. The name sounds familiar, but that doesn't mean a whole lot, Well, at least according to Wikipedia, the always reliable Wikipedia. There's nothing about her being on NXT. But since I don't know much more about this than anybody, I'll just say Jade because she's the champion, and whatever. So that's TNA Slammiversary Sunday, and that's that. Let's see here. I do want to send out my condolences to the families of both Muhammad Ali and Kimbo Slice, both of whom passed away since their last shows. It was shocking for a couple different reasons. Muhammad Ali, perhaps the greatest boxer of all time, and from what you hear, he was suffering from Parkinson's really bad in the last couple of weeks. So you hate to see anybody die, but it's more of a mercy killing perhaps than anything else. Kimbo Slice, he is one of the most unique individuals you will ever see, and he made people interested in MMA fans. I was watching Pardon the Interruption the other day, and Kornheiser and Will Bond were talking about how Dan Le Batard showed them Kimbo Slice, and Kimbo Slice was somebody that they went out to watch fight, because this wasn't somebody that, the MMA wasn't something they were used to, but Kimbo Slice was something different. Kimbo Slice was something that they went out of their way to go check out. And so it's, again, the condolences, your thoughts go out to both their families, and that's that. By the way, Spike TV will be showing a 1-hour special on June 24th at 7 p.m. regarding Kimbo, and it's out. Doctors were telling Kimbo a few weeks before his death that he was suffering from a little bit of heart failure and would need a heart transplant. So yeah, I should let you know the NXT Takeover Brooklyn pre-sale code is WWE NXT. Tomorrow morning you can go on and get the good seats. Apparently, let's see here. Going through here to see what else is going on in the wrestling world. Yeah, we don't have 3 minutes of news, so hope Brian on to do 3 minutes of news at some point. Let's see, anything going on? Apparently, WWE is doing a history of the Hardcore title DVD. Go figure. I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. And I guess that's it. Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt at UFC 200. If Brock can get him down, that's all I can say. Is if Brock can get him down, he's going to have a good shot. But if he can't, he's going to get knocked the bleep out. But that's going to do it for this week. Sometimes it's really hard to do these shows by yourself. But Brian should be back at some point. Of course, Lauren and I will be back tomorrow night and early Friday morning with the Arya and Lauren show, plus the bonus Wrestling Outfitters podcast, which should be happening Friday afternoon. Trust me, if it goes through, it's going to be a really big show, really special show. And so tune in, check out my Facebook and Twitter, and we'll be posting that as it comes. But thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again later on.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.